Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for this MT for Asian Languages webinar. I'm Amy Ephraim, the Membership Coordinator for GALA, and I'll be moderating our session today. And with us today is Don Shin, the founder and CEO of One Stop Translation, and I'll let Don introduce himself a little bit more in just a minute. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, we are making a recording of this presentation and it will be available on GALA's website, and everyone will also receive a follow-up email with a link to that tomorrow. So you can share it with other colleagues, watch it again yourself, whatever you'd like to do. Everyone's lines have been muted, but Don does want your participation in this webinar, so how you'll do that is through the question and chat box there that you have on your control panel, and you'll be able to, if Don asks a question, you'll be able to respond that way. And if you have any questions for Don during the presentation, feel free to send those, and I will moderate those and ask those for you. So feel free to reach out if you have any other technical problems or questions, but otherwise I hope you enjoy the presentation, and Don, I'll turn things over to you.
Hello everybody. I wish everybody can hear me well. Let me introduce a little bit about me, my company, and this presentation first. First of all, our company is a one-stop translation company. It's a company that does Asian language translation for translation companies. So naturally, this is about Asian languages, and also this is most geared for our translation companies. I want to confirm that this is not for engineers. If you expected something very highly technical, that's not what I can do well. This is more also limited to Asian languages. I don't know much about other languages like European languages. And also, this is the focus for LSP's view. This is mostly for the modern technology. This is more geared for the business-wise. I want to, as a businessman and a PM's point of view, what is worth it rather than what is available. So let me start my company presentations. These days, I think most people now MT is accepted by our industry eventually. It was a few years ago that I did first my presentation regarding MT. I believe that was about 3-4 years ago. Even at that time, most people, MT was kind of treated as a taboo in our industry, especially, strangely enough, within our own translation industry, most people worried about MT and they believe that this can be a threat, while the market already are expecting us for, to use the MT. But now, within the last 2 or 3 years, it seems like MT is very widely accepted in our industry, and most people are not worried about saying about the MT and admit that we are using the MT. But now, another thing is, I think most people think worried about MT. So even though we talk about MT so much, but in reality, most our LSP companies doesn't have that much experience or that much options to do the MT. So this is kind of new trend, and most people worried. What should I do if our customer asks us about MT options, or what should I do not to be left behind in this trend? And also, people, if you do the see the options, this is a new industry, and still don't know where to start. Nothing seems to mature enough. So the goal of this webinar is, at the end of this one, at least, I want you to have the idea Now I know at least where I can start or what I should do for now. That's the main goal of this presentation. So I want to briefly see why MT. It's very common subject now. This is a copied presentation from Asia Online, and I have the list of the copied references at the end of this presentation. So as you can see in the presentation, the information is growing fastly, and our human translation capacity, unfortunately, are not reaching this kind of very steep curves. So MT is very natural. And also why Asia? If you see the Asian, in MT especially, Asian language is very important. The first chart shows the top 10 languages in the internet. If you see, the second is Chinese, third is Spanish, fourth is Japanese, and Korean is also among one of the top 10. The Asian language is more important when you see the other chart. This is the patent applications by countries by WIPO in year 2011. If you see this chart, the most common languages in patent world is actually not English, as Japan has the most numbers of patents in the world, and followed by China, and third is the United States, and fourth is South Korea. So among the top 4 is 3 languages are all Asian languages. So especially in patent world, actually Asian language is the dominating word and the majority. So if you see if you count the top 10 countries patent applications, 58% of those patents are written in CJK. And also this graph is another one. I compared the most popular language pairs of FIGS, French, Italian, German, and Spanish versus CJK. Then in the internet, if you translate your English material into FIGS, French, Italian, German, and Spanish, you will have a new 322 million audience. But if you translate those the same pages in just the CJK, you will get almost twice more new audience, 583 million. And another very interesting strategy is if you compare the internet penetration of Asia, you will see it's still 27%, while the rest of the world is 42%. And Asia is one of the fastest growing market in the world too. When this reaches to the world standard of about 40%, this number of 583 million will also can be increased a lot. So not only at this point and also in the future, it is very clear that Asian language will be more and more important in everyday increasing internet data. So the demand for the MT probably will be increased a lot. So this is another copy of presentation copied from Asia Online. And as you can see in here, in the future, probably those kind of most important and sensitive materials like a corporate product manual or corporate documents will be still translated by human, but a lot of those other new markets for the machine translation will be emerging. And actually it's emerging already. Oops. It seems like I would like to introduce a couple of cases of the human translation. When, then, we can use the machine translation. One of the case recently we found was a car maker in it's a laboratory located in USA. Originally, this company came from Japan. So naturally, they had hundreds of thousands of all previous documents, especially those technical related documents for engineers were originally written in in Japanese. And those are, but the people in USA bench or laboratory need to see all those documents. But it's too much to be handled in human translation. And that was for only internal reviews. So the company asked us to do the machine translation. But in this case, number one, the volume is too much. Second, the content is very highly technical. And third, in most cases, a lot of those files were in PowerPoint, which requires cannot be automated easily in these days in machine translation. So what we had to do is we had to use before we go for that. The good thing though is they have built up big translation memories and very good, well-organized glossaries. So what we did that is we used a machine translation and added those translation memories and glossaries. And after the output, we had to do the manual DTP though. So it's kind of building translation, machine translation engine plus post-editing plus DTP. But we didn't have that much time to prepare the manual engines, and building up the customized engine will take several months, and still we cannot guarantee the quality can be better than those available engines on the market. So what we chose was we chose the existing Japanese on-the-shelf machine translation engines and input our translation memories and glossaries, and with that method we could start the project within just 1 week with the cost of just about a couple of $1,000. And the result was we charged about 80% of the human translation, and the productivity was a lot better. And at this time, again, the customer knew that we were using the machine translation, and they didn't expect it 100% the same human level with the human translations. Another case is, again, I copied from other companies, and they use it in many. Still, I haven't seen very well measured productivity increased in Asian language machine translation, but from other languages, in European languages, people reported about, in many cases, most cases, people reported about 20% to 30% of increase in productivity. In their case, where this is when you compared with the human translation. So there are two basically different case studies. One is the customer know that doesn't expect as good as human translations. They know that this will be the basically machine translation, and they they are ready to sacrifice the final qualities compared to the human translation. Instead, they want to save money and save time. But in other cases, these days, I see many LSP starting using the machine translation in other purpose. In here, they want to reach the same level of quality as human translation and just increase the productivity and decrease the time. So during these several cases, early cases, most people are reporting about 20 to 30%. So in this case, many LSPs charge 100%, and customer expectation is the same as 100%, but increase in productivity can be vary according to the investment you are making into these engines, customized engine, or the which method you are taking. So I'd like to see a couple of other unusual cases. One of the case was something like this. It was 650 pages of Excel sheet with almost 300K words. We didn't mean to, at first this was totally human translation. And we didn't mean to use machine translation, but the volume was tremendous. Then we found out that these are not a full sentence. Most of those are just the terms and glossaries. Luckily enough, we had very good terms, and before we reached to this part of the project, we already had a pretty big translation memory for these customers, which was created by ourselves. So we thought maybe, and we'll run the machine translation. We built up the engine quickly and run it, and 600 pages and 300K words could be translated within a couple of hours. And the quality was a lot better than we expected, because this is not a long sentence. Basically, this is just looking for the glossaries, and most glossaries were already available in our translation memories and glossary list. So we could finish this 300K words of translation within just a few days. And it took very little of the time compared to the human translation. And the quality had no problem. Actually, it was even better than a human, because a machine is much better in finding the exact terms and exact combination of the terms. So it's kind of luck, and we got pretty good success without planning that much. So another case was patent and legal. Many people think that patent and legal might be last area for machine translation. But actually, from many case studies, patent and legal sometimes has better result than any other areas. The most difficult area for machine translation is naturally like marketing or sales or some creative writings. But compared to those creative marketing writings, patent and legal has very clear patents and very well organized construction of the sentences. So surprisingly enough, we see in many cases those patent and legal documents shows very good result in machine translation. Especially patent can be easily, one sentence can be just half pages or 1/3 of the whole pages. And even in human translation, it takes tremendous time to just translate understand one sentence clearly and write it down again in target languages. But and most of those words are actually the technical terms. And machine is really good in that. So machine, at least it finds all those terms from the memories or build the sentences, and all you need is change the sentences for better readabilities. So in many cases, patent or legal, even though this is not originally intended for machine translation, it's worth it to try with machine. If you already have some engines, it's worth to try before you do the human translation. That was from our experience again. Now I want to see what is the difference in Asian languages. There are several challenges for Asian language machine translations. And first of all, the language is really difficult. Not only the characters, we don't. Most Asian languages doesn't use the alphabets, and also the language structure is really different. And another thing is the tools. Also, the language itself is not only the characters. There are a lot of differences. Many Asian languages has different tone, affix, and word segmentation rules. So they are very different from European languages. In many cases, the source language can be source or target language can be English, which is really different. And another challenge for Asian language is there are not many tools. For machine translation, to do a machine translation, you need technical tools, but as you can see here, a lot of those are not still available. And the biggest challenge in Asian language actually is the corpus. The machine these days, the most important tool in machine translation is the corpus, or in other words, database. Luckily, in European languages, you have a lot of really good, best quality corpus in many language pairs. For example, the EU has all documents in all EU languages, and that is translated by the best human translators, and you have huge references, and they also have big millions of words of glossaries, very well organized by different organizations. But unfortunately, in most Asian languages, even for Korean, Japanese, Chinese, and Korean, we don't have that much well-built corpus. So there is the resources is very limited. I have a short list of here. You can see that this is AMTA's. This is Asian Language Machine Translation. Association of Asian Language Machine Translation has whole full list of Asian MT, but one warning is these are most of those tools listed in here. You will find like 40, 50 tools, but most of them are discontinued. So that's another problem because they don't have that much market. A lot of those government-funded projects could not be continued and cannot be successful in commercial-wise. So a lot of them had to be discontinued. And also you have some limited Chinese or Japanese corpus. If anyone are interested in building Chinese or Japanese translation machine translation engines, this could be another good resource. And also, one more thing I would like to mention here is the quality of the corpus. The most well-known fact of the machine translation engine these days are the quality of the input. If you put a garbage, you will get only garbage. So if in most cases, if you buy it from other places, especially in Asian languages, it's very hard to measure the source quality. So you will see there are some funny machine translations like this in many places of China or in other countries. And my favorite is this one. The Chinese character here means restaurant. So someone wanted to use the machine translation engine and get the translation of restaurant. And unfortunately, at that time, it seems like the translation server was not working correctly. So they got like translate server error, and someone copied it, just the sentences. He thought that this is the translation of the restaurant and just copied it and put it big on their gate. So another some characteristics. So characteristic of the Asian translation is it can be really different from the directions. For example, Chinese into English. Usually, what I see is Chinese into English can be worse than English into Chinese, because in Chinese there are a lot of abbreviations or not appearing well-organized grammars. So when it's a lot of those sentence objects are missed in Chinese sentences. So when you translate into English, you have to create. So it's very difficult for machine to do it. The other way, English into Chinese, it has usually better qualities. Korean into Japanese, I did it, and in Asian language, between Asian languages, we did some tests too. Korean into Japanese usually get better qualities than Japanese into Korean too. So also sometimes, and in some languages like Thai or Vietnamese, these languages are very limited, and usually the quality is really not practical yet. So sometimes when you do Korean into English, in many cases the quality is not good, but Japanese into English is better. And Korean and between Korean and Japanese has pretty good result. From our experience, if you translate Japanese general newspaper articles and translate into Korean, almost 80% it's understandable. So sometimes you may get better chances to translate Korean into Japanese first and then Japanese into English. The good thing about machine translation is that you don't have to wait a few more days to be translated first into Japanese. So that's something when you have a project, that's something you can consider. Another thing very important in Asian language machine translation is sometimes the single language, there are many single language tools are available, and in most cases from our experience, though they shows better than the general multi-language translation engines. So, and also in subject-wise, sometimes very specialized engine might be available for this purpose. For example, later I will introduce a separate patent machine translation engines for Japanese. So those, if you have Japanese into English project, patent project, instead of using just multi-language, the ones you have, the multi-language versions, it might make a lot more sense to just buy another tool for that purpose only. Usually the cost is about a couple of thousand, $1,000 to $2,000, but the good thing is this is something built for that purpose only for many years, and these days most of those tools has the function you can add your own translation memory or glossaries. Now, so here in the introduction of machine translations, the most important thing is you have to understand where you are. There are many steps or many levels of complexity in machine translation as a translation company. To start with, many companies these days provide, you can simply add one of the service in your list without any investment or the studies. You can just add post-editing service. In many cases, still, this is the majority of our own business too. In many cases, the customers, they build their own machine translation engines. We're using their tools. And there are these days, there are many vendors who have those kind of specialties. So they hire the machine translation engine vendors and build their own translation memories, machine translation engine, and ask us to do the post-editing. So that's the relatively the easiest thing machine translation companies can start doing business with the machine translation. And second thing is very available on the web for everyone. Google Translate Toolkit and Microsoft Translator Hub. Google Translate Toolkit, most people are accustomed to Google Translation, but still, even in translation companies, Google Translator Toolkit is not well known. So I will introduce a little bit about that in the next slides. But let's just keep going. What options we see? Another one is very easy step is everybody here in our industry has CAT tools. And most of those CAT tools now support the MT as a kind of option. So that's something you can start without that big investment. If you have built up those kind of experience and you have more needs, maybe it's time to build your own custom engine. And once you have one custom engine, your own engines, maybe you can integrate with your own process. So when you do all these ones, I still believe that you don't have to worry about to hurry too much. You just you may have different needs from the other cost. It's not time yet to most companies invest that much money on building your own translation machine translation engines. Another thing I want to stress here is that the engine, when you talk with the machine translation engine builders, they may tell you the price, but actually those are just a part of the price tags you really have to pay. What I'm saying is the cost of the tools or the cost of the vendors are actually small part of the total expenses you need to expect. The bigger part is your own time and building your own memories. Especially companies like us, we are having like almost 1,000 projects every month in 10 different Asian languages and for 400 customers. Just building up, managing the translation memories and providing the right memories in the right format and preparing it will take tremendous time. Even before we build the engines. And after that, even in many cases, 90% of those custom engines actually cannot produce as good a result as those commercial engines available on the market yet. So even after that, still you don't know how good engines you need. So you have to be careful when you do those kind of big investment in time-wise and money-wise. So overall, I see many companies that takes up to 2 or 3 years or minimum $20,000-$30,000 in total to build their own several engines. So that's still kind of big investment. And another big thing is that target is the industry, and the technology step is still evolving. So it can be a lot cheaper and easier within a couple of years later. So this is a very simple introduction about Google Translate Toolkit. We are very familiar, most people are very familiar with the fact that you can just search get the machine translation from Google machine translator, but actually they have a full toolkits which you can change the one and train, give back the feedback and import your own documents and translate it. It's just like a kind of simple web-based CAT tools that has machine translation function. But one thing you really, as most people know in this industry these days, you have to be very careful about the confidentiality. If this is a confidential information and your client doesn't want to publicize it, you may get in trouble. So you have to check with the competent authority and also agreement approval from your customers. Another very good thing, especially normally for the technical documents, many reports says that they see better result from technical or computer related subjects. They get a better result from Microsoft translators compared to Google. That's because Microsoft has built up their own translation memories for a long time, and many of our IT industry are related to Microsoft. So when it's Microsoft related applications, it's a good idea to translate consider using Microsoft translator instead of Google. And Microsoft has a very good service called Microsoft Translator Hub. You can very easily, without hiring a vendors, you can build up your own machine translation engines. But again, this is also, you have to check with your customers for the confidentiality. That is the biggest one. Other than that, this is very cheap. I think it's almost free. I could not confirm 100%, but last week I heard that Microsoft announced that their translator hub is now free. There used to be a small charges, but not anymore. And also, this is a sample from our Deja Vu. You can see the option. These days, many tools has the options to connect with machine translation. In theory, basically what it does is when you don't have machine translation memories, you can get it. The CAT tool automatically sends the segmentation to the machine translation engines and shows you the result, and you can choose. So in this case, in the Deja Vu's case, you can choose, has the option from Google Translate, Sistran. Sistran is the most well-known machine translation engine, standalone engine. But in this case, this is a Sistran Enterprise Server. And a Microsoft Translator, I translate for, and Prompt. Prompt, as long as I know, is pretty very easy to buy and use the machine translation packages, but unfortunately they don't provide Asian languages yet. So this is another one. Sistran is good to support CJK. So Systron, you have, it looks like translation machine, CAT tools. You can edit and also build up your own translation memories. These days, many tools. This is another case of standalone package. The good thing about a standalone package is, number one, it's very easy to, it's 100% all you need is just to buy the packages and import, choose whatever TMs you need, and within a couple of days you can start a project. So if you are not ready, if you don't have your own translation memories, machine translation engines, it's a good option to buy. And Systron is good because it has a lot of languages and relatively cheap, and you can very well organized and approved tools. And as I said before, for Asian languages, still you can think about buying a specialized tools. In our case, one of our favorite is Fujitsu's Atlas. It's a hybrid engine, rule plus translation memories plus dictionaries. So you can, it shows basically two interfaces. The left one is the post-editing interface. You can import the file and edit the result. And if you push this button, you can translate, and then you can edit from these windows. And another one is you can just open within the MS Word. So open the MS Word and click the buttons, and it's already translated, and now you can edit within the MS Word. And another very popular one is Toshiba Honyaku. And in this one, you have a patent edition separate, as I said. So they have the professional general version and technical version and patent version. So if your document is highly technical or patent, maybe it's worth it to consider these kind of tools. And another, in Chinese, this is a tool built by one of the government agencies. It's it has similar function with like Honyaku or this Systron, but only deals with English into Chinese, Chinese into English, and we found that mostly the result is better than other tools. And those are the list of the custom MT engine service providers. I think you can check in the web. And this is the list of the references I used in this. And at least now, I wish, as I promised from the at the starting of this presentation, I wish now people has better understandings. And now, don't worry about being behind the trend, and a little know at least what to do and what is good for your own study. So this is what I prepared. I heard that I got up to 1 hour, and I wanted to be as quick and also as interactive as possible. So if there's questions or comments, I'd like to get. So Amy, do we have any questions so far?
Thank you, Don. Nothing is coming yet, but do feel free if you have any questions for Don. We'll give people a few minutes, and if you have anything you'd like to ask, you can type that in the box, and he would be happy to take any questions. While you're thinking, I will just let you know that we We have a couple other webinars specifically related to Asia coming up, so you'll want to check out the calendar on those. Don has started off this little series on our focus on Asia webinars. We have one coming up in a couple weeks on how to attract and retain the best Asian linguists, and then one the following week, June 20th, on protecting IP in Asia, eliminating translation issues with patents and other scientific documents. So check those out if that sounds interesting to you and get registered for those. And someone's asking about a recording. Yes, we have made a recording, and that will be available on Gala's website. And also, you'll receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to that. So feel free to check that out. Does anybody, I'm not seeing any questions. Here, one is starting to come in. Okay, Don, how do you deal with formatting issues?
It depends on, as I said, still many engines do not support, especially the Moses, basically the raw Moses engine is very primitive in dealing the complicated ones. And so they're basically still, as long as I understand, the engine, the Moses itself is pretty text-based. But so we had to, in this kind of cases I mentioned, we had to manually do the PowerPoint editing ourselves, and also you probably in many cases you need to process prepare the formats before you enter into the machine translation engine. It depends. Also, not only for the format, but also in many cases you have to deal with the clean the tags. Otherwise, from the translation memories. Otherwise, the memories cannot get 100% effect. It depends on the tools. As I said, in Systran or some those packages, standalone packages, they have the option you can open MS Word basic format or HTML, MSL or XML files directly, but not those most custom-built machine translation engines. Any other?
I don't see any other questions that have come in. So any last minute things to say, Don, before we say goodbye here?
Not really. I just wish that my presentation gave a little help to those many worried LSP project managers or the owners these days regarding MT.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for attending. As I mentioned, there is a recording. You'll be able to check that out later and share that with anyone you think might find it useful. Do check out the webinar calendar as well and get registered for other webinars that are of interest to you. And when you log off today, you'll get a survey, and we do appreciate if you take just 30 seconds to give us feedback on this session and others that you would like to see in this series. So thanks again to everyone, and we will wish you a good day or a good night, depending on where you are. And hope to see you at another webinar soon. Bye for now.
Thank you, everyone.